Hi, my name is Angèle Taylor, and I'm a strategic solutions architect here with 4Point, and this is 4Point Pathways. Previously, we talked about defining what a form was, what a document was, how we can improve data capture, why we wanted to improve data capture, along with overcoming some legacy restraints that we have that keep us from actually modernizing our data capture. Today, I want to do something a little bit different, and I apologize for anyone who's just listening to the recording. I really do suggest you come in and watch it at a screen if you can to get the full impact. But what I'd like to do today is go through and give you an example of what a good data capture could possibly be for your business. So again, I apologize if you're watching it, if you're listening to it rather than watching it, but I really do suggest you come in and watch the video rather than just listen to it. I will try my best to describe it for anyone who's listening to it. So let's go right in here. So what you see on the screen now is a standard 8x11 government form. We can see that it's got the regular boxes that we're used to seeing. We all probably feel really comfortable with this form. And I want to highlight some of the problems with this form. Specifically, let's talk about the architecture here, the navigation of it. Where am I supposed to fill out? So if we look at part A, this is supposed to be filled out by the representative. In this case, I am the representative. I should be filling out this section. But let's go ahead and look at the other sections. Just scan ahead. Here in part B, this is set for the health practitioner. I am not the health practitioner, so why am I seeing this section? I understand it's part of the application and it needs to be kept together, but if I wasn't paying attention and noticed that it said it needed to be completed by the regulated health practitioner, I might go ahead and start filling out this section. This form is not a terrible example of this. It's pretty clear cut. There's a nice big heading. They did a very good job at navigating it to try to draw your eye to it. I've seen far worse examples because I'm really bad for it myself. When I have to fill out print forms, I have trouble identifying where I'm supposed to write and where I'm not supposed to write. Or you take it a step further, what format do you want me to put it in? I'm looking at dates specifically. You want it to be in a specific format. So we want to make sure that we keep things as legible as possible and easy to navigate so the end user knows where they're supposed to fill out. If we keep going, the last section at the bottom, this is for office use only. So again, this is another section that we don't need to see that we're showing to the end user. Let's go back to the top of this form and let's look at what needs to be filled in. If we look, we're trying to ask what type of transaction we're doing. In this case, you can do multiple things on this application. You can create a new one or you can renew something. I can also change my address or change my name or change something else. There's so many things going on. In this case, it's manageable. It's not too bad. I have seen more complicated ones where it's if it's a new permit, fill out section A3 or whatever. I'm sure you've seen those too. And they can get really, really complicated. Navigation is very tricky to do when you have this kind of form. Again, we're talking about other issues where end users can run into problems. We're talking about dates and we're talking about what kind of character codes. Do you want me to write the whole word? Can I put Ontario? Are both acceptable? When you have these standard forms, you're limited on what you can do. And so oftentimes either the end user doesn't know how to fill out the form correctly and it has to be resent back to them to recomplete, or the business has to spend the time fixing those issues before they're able to take it into the system. You don't want to actually submit bad data into your repository, so someone has to do some kind of a cleanup beforehand. But if we go ahead and create a better data capture, we can reduce a lot of that overhead. So let's go ahead and start looking at what the application could be like. Now I've moved over to a web browser and you can see that this is the application for an accessible parking permit. I can see that I'm at this splash page. This is what I wanted to fill out, so I'm in the right spot. So let's go ahead and start. When we get here, we're able to see some overview of what the actual process is. So here, there's a little reminder, and they're telling me what kind of collateral I need to be able to complete this transaction. If I didn't have any of these, I could come back at a later date and try to fill out my application, but it's nice to give the information ahead of time so that an end user is prepared for what they need to do to be able to complete the process. Something else we might notice out now that we've moved into the application, we're starting to fill out information, how simple it is. When we were looking at the original document, it has fields everywhere. When we're looking at this screen, it's streamlined. There's one field, and as we get deeper in, you'll see that there are grouped content that is easy to ingest, to understand, and to be able to navigate through, which is really the end goal. We don't want to complicate the process. We want to make sure it's simple, easy to use. So I'm going to fill this out on behalf of myself and continue on. We're also able to help the user along. As you can see here, we have some help buttons, and if I click on the help buttons, it navigates us to an accessible help. So here, this is meeting accessibility standards for screen readers to be able to understand for the end user who needs it to be read out for them. We're also able to get that inline help for any user who is confused on what needs to be added, what needs to be included. If for some reason a field is a little bit tricky and we need to have a little bit more information rather than having the straight field name, we're able to have that inline help for the user so they don't have to leave the application. We are here, we give them the tools they need to succeed to ensure that they complete the process. So I'm going to go ahead and renew and continue through the application. Something else that's pivotal to mention is that it dynamically adjusts to the screen resolution. This is, so regardless of how I want to access my content, it dynamically takes up the screen that is accessible to it. The benefit of this is that if I was filling this out on my phone, for example, or an iPad, or if I wanted to be crazy and put it on my big screen TV to fill it out, I can't. I am completely free to do whatever means I want to access the content. Side note, just for any of the technical people, this is still using a single source of truth. This is one document. There aren't multiple renditions that need to be loaded. This application is smart enough to handle it on its own, so there's no overhead to handle all of the different breakpoints, which is important. We don't want to create extra work. We're also able to have inline validation. So here, let's look at this field. This field is saying it must be 7 fields. It needs to be 7 characters. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm only going to put 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, when I leave the field, I'm getting this immediate feedback. The screen is red. There's an error message. This field is not completed correctly, and I can get immediate feedback to fix it now. Benefit of this is that currently, especially in this case, I have a document that I am referring to get the permit number. And they've highlighted here on this image where the information is, again, helping the end user as much as possible to ensure that they're successful at completing the application. But I have the document, it's in front of me. I was looking at it to be able to put the information into the account. Once I'm done with this, I'm going to move it away and then continue on with whatever other information I need to fulfill. If the validation is done at the end, I'm going to have to go back to that document versus now I have it in front of me. So if I leave the error, I've now updated it, I put 7 characters. When I leave the field, the validation runs again and it's now telling me that yes, this is correct. Again, enabling me at the time. That way I don't have to go back at a future date to come back to fix it because it does need to be fixed. So let's go ahead and put some extra information in here. And something else to keep track of is all of the helpful information or elements to be able to capture information. So here, let's say the calendar. I'm just going to go ahead and pick any date. Let's just go February, which is not accurate. That would be born last year. But for the sake of putting in data, you can go ahead and you can use intelligent components like your data capture. We've also seen radio buttons. There's drop downs, check boxes. Using the appropriate field element at a particular time helps to ensure that customers are putting in the correct data where necessary. Good use of a drop down is whenever there are only so many options that they can select. Don't let them type it out. Strings are really the worst idea unless you have to use them, because you can't validate what it is, right? It's just a bunch of text and it could have anything in the contents, versus if it's something that they can choose from a list or from some kind of regulated element. We're doing the data validation ahead of time before we're capturing the data, before it has to be cleaned up. We don't want to have to do that cleanup. Do it now before it gets submitted. Again, we're seeing the inline help. We're able to put information in. As we go through, I'll just put a little bit of information so that way whenever we get to the end, we'll be able to see it. Gmail.com and continue through. You're also noticing that we're seeing more fields. Originally, you were only seeing 1 or 2 elements. And the reason for that was because we were going ahead and we were trying to set up the navigation. We were setting up the architecture for it. We were going ahead and we were saying that these certain fields would be needed for certain aspects of the form. And now we're at the actual contents of the form. So based off of the responses we had earlier, we're able to customize this section to only show content that's relevant to the end user rather than showing them everything. And go ahead and put Ontario. Is the mailing address the same? Options like this are also very beneficial to save time for our end user. Oftentimes your mailing address is the same as your home address. So let's streamline the process. Let's not ask them to do it again. Let's go ahead and submit it. Before I leave here though, I want to call out the postal code lookup button. And so what this is a way for our data capture to connect to an external source to be able to do a lookup. That's something you want to do if you can to help streamline your user's experience. In this case, finding the postal code, or if you wanted to pre-fill their information for their actual information, if we know who they are, like if we're filling out something for our bank, we had to log into the banking information so they know who we are, they know our name, they know our address, they can pre-fill that information for us. But if you have a list of products, for example, that you wanted to have available, you can have that direct link to the data source rather than embedding that information in the form, in the data capture. So that way, if the list changes, it automatically adjusts for the data capture for the end user at the time it renders. So every time we load it, it's going to make that link to the data source, get the actual values, and bring it back. I also want to highlight the look and feel. It looks very different than it did on the 8x11 form that we were filling out. We can also see that the coloring is different. It's not just the layout that's different. We're able to create content like these yellow boxes to give information back to the user. So these are more of an informational warning thing versus the blue help boxes we saw earlier were extra information that is there to guide them and help them through the application. But you're able to put your custom branding on this. It's not that standard black and white form that everyone is used to seeing. You're really able to put your company on it, your organization. An organization spends so much time building their company brand. It's important that we leverage that throughout the entire application. Any kind of interaction you have with your customer, you want to make sure that you are giving the best appearance, the best face of the company every time you interact with the customer. So here I'm going to go ahead and I have agreed that I consent with what they're having above in the user information, and it automatically put in today's date. And we're going to go ahead and complete this. Now here is a view of all of the information that we have put in, all of the information that was gathered as part of the application. And I can review it all in one place. I've consented, I've put my email in. All that's left now is to do the digital signature. And if I had a stylus or I was doing this on my phone, it would be far easier to do. But for the sake of it, I'm going to just put a quick little signature there and confirm this. Now, I want to take a second to show you what the PDF looks like, because this was the data capture for the end user. This was the experience that they could have. Realistically, the organization still needs that 8x11 PDF form to be continuing the process for this application. So what we'll do is we'll take all of the information that was gathered and push it into the PDF. For the sake of this demo, I've actually put a view PDF button here so we can go ahead and see what that looks like. In actuality, I probably wouldn't recommend showing this screen to your end user. They don't need to see it. It's confusing to them, but I want to make sure that everyone here understands that all of the data that was captured can be pushed into our document. We have our form at the front that caught all the information. That was for the business user, for the end users. This is for the organization. The organization still requires the standard 8x11 form. And this is the form we showed earlier at the beginning of this session, but with our data inserted into it. So here we're seeing all of the information that was put here. And you see my signature was also embedded in it. So all of those typical reasons why people are saying that you have to stick with a legacy format, you have to keep your 8x11, I need to be able to handle this particular form for submission, I need my digital signature, it's part of our workflow process. That doesn't mean you can't change the front end as part of it. The last thing I want to highlight is the submit. From here, you're able to submit this application, and it can kick off an automated workflow. So instead of having to mail something, you can have a digital transaction, and technology being technology, you can do almost anything you want after that button is selected. You can send a copy to the person who is filling it out. You can strip the data out and put it into a repository. You can send this PDF version out to somebody who needs to approve it, or send it to the health practitioner. Sky's the limit. It's whatever your business process would require. The idea here was to show you an example of what a good experience can be for the end user. We're updating the data capture. We're still keeping the standard 8x11 form. And I hope this was really insightful for you. I hope you got excited about this, because this is where you should be. This is where you want to go. This is what will keep your customers happy. This is how you're going to retain people. This is how you're going to get new people on board, because people are going to like your experiences and they're going to talk with other people. So you're going to have advertising from that. Sky is the limit when you start creating a better data capture to help your organization long term. And I hope you you continue to watch the next video, where we're going to talk about how you can start moving forward with this. We've looked at what the process is and all of the benefits and where you can go, but specifically, how do you and your organization start to make progress with this? Because it's not an overnight thing. There is steps and there's procedures that have to be changed, and making big changes in organizations, they take time. And maybe it doesn't make sense for your organization to come all the way here, but I can assure you there's some improvements that can be done on your data capture, and you really should start looking at that. And that's what we're going to explore next time. So I'm excited to see you guys next time. Bye.